All right, it is 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all for tuning in. My name is Jessica Mitsch Holmes, and I am the co-founder and CEO here at Momentum. And I've got our Director of Engineering and Instruction, Amy Gori, with us today. And we are here for preparing your team for the evolving realities of AI. This has been, ever since ChatGPT has entered the space, there's been pretty much nonstop conversation about AI, at least in our world, and I know for many of you, it's been the same. So we wanted to have a conversation today about what we're seeing, what we're hearing. For some context, Momentum focuses on training and workforce development. We specifically focus on reskilling and upskilling folks that are career changers or people that are existing already in the workforce doing other jobs. And we train them in technology roles, mostly around coding, so software engineering, QA engineering, DevOps, those type of roles. We also train a lot of people for technical customer success manager positions as well. And we have close to 400 folks that we've trained across the tech industry, over 120 companies. So we get a lot of insight into what is happening when there's a new trend or a new topic of conversation. And so Amy and I wanted to have a conversation today and really also answer any questions that you all have as participants about how artificial intelligence has already and will in the future impact the workforce, and what can we do to make sure that we're ready for it. So a couple of housekeeping items. We would love for this to be really driven by your questions. So there's an ability to ask a question in the chat. And we hope that you all will ask questions so that we can make this engaging for you. We're going to start off with a conversation on some certain topics and just set the tone for what we're seeing. And then we really will open this up for Q&A. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so that you can see just Amy and I. Hopefully this works. All right. So first off, Amy, if you want to say a few words, introduce yourself and what you do here at Momentum.
Sure. Yeah. As you said, I'm the Director of Engineering and Instruction. What that title translates into, most days I am working with our learners. So I'm teaching folks how to write code, how to think about building software products, how to practice the habits of professional engineers when it comes to working with other people, when it comes to problem solving, breaking down a product into, smaller bits to something you can work on. So I am hands-on with all of our folks. I'm also writing and updating constantly our curriculum, which is one of the reasons why we're here today, because I've been keeping an eye on the headlines, as Jessica has, and we've been our eyebrows have been going further and further up as we've watched this. So we're always evolving in tech. That's one of my roles, and our whole team is constantly, keeping our eye on the ball and updating what we're teaching to match what things are actually being used these days in the industry. And we've got a lot of questions around AI.
So to start with, let's set the tone. What is AI? When we say AI, what do we mean?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this question from the perspective not of somebody who works in AI or has built AI, but somebody who is, informed and technical and keeping an eye on what this is. So AI, artificial intelligence, this is a term that really gets, I think, bandied about in a way that makes it really hard to understand what is it. So I want to say first that it is a collection of technologies that some of which have been around for a really long time. So folks probably are familiar with things like machine learning. Maybe you've heard of natural language processing. Certainly, about data engineering and data analysis. These things are some of the building blocks behind what we call AI now. when it comes to the AI that everybody's all hyped up about right now, I want to think about like, the underlying tech, and I'm not going to get super technical about it, one, because I can't explain all of the tech. It's really complicated, but also there's not just that piece of understanding the technical bit. There's also like, how are you going to use it? What is like what does it mean to you, the everyday person, not just a person in the industry? So when it comes to that, how it's showing up and what has grabbed all the headlines is, and probably what folks here have heard of, is ChatGPT, which is a chatbot style interface where you are seemingly having a conversation with a bot of some kind. That bot behind that interface, that's the so-called artificial intelligence, and that's backed by all of this tech, natural language processing and large language models. That's another term you probably have heard. And what that means, just really simply, is like a lot of data gets input into this, for lack of a better word, computer program. Lots and lots of data. In terms of lots of data, I'm talking about the entire internet, like everything. Put that all together with these neural networks, which are sort of ways of mimicking the way human thought works, making connections and forming context around things. That translates into essentially an extremely sophisticated and really effective prediction of what are the next most likely words in a certain context. It's not like Google search in the sense that you get, a list of things. It's more like you get it's more like a conversation. You get a bunch of words that read like language, and it feels like someone is talking to you. So that is, I think, when we're talking about AI in the media, a lot of it is this, this interface of some kind. Maybe it's ChatGPT, maybe it's an interface that you're encountering, like with some software service that you've signed up for. You get to talk to a little bot. These are tools that are showing up in sort of big ways and small ways, and they're going to be showing up more and more and more and more.
So OpenAI released ChatGPT several months back to the public, and this is when we all probably had our real first experience seeing the power of this technology, and that's why it has all of a sudden just completely inundated the culture. But it has been around for a while. It's not like ChatGPT came out and it's not the first thing that's happened in artificial intelligence. So can you talk a little bit about like the years past for folks tuning in? Where would they have seen artificial intelligence without maybe knowing that's what they were interacting with?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a good handle on the whole history of it. I know I don't have a good handle on that. But I think, that term, like I said, it gets sort of used in all kinds of contexts. I think over the years, we've gotten closer to this expectation that we're going to be able to put some information into something and have it understand us, right? Like it started with Google, where we were just like, people were asking Google questions. We still do this. I'm sure we all still do this, right? Like, how do I fix my broken dishwasher, or things like that? What does it mean when there's gray sludge coming out of it? Those kind of questions. We want like an answer that we don't have to parse ourselves. We don't have to translate. We just want to be like, just tell me what it is. So like part of it, I think, is that our, absorbing search engine stuff into our normal lives. And then we all got used to Siri on our phones, right? Or our Google Assistant or Alexa or something. Like Alexa, order some more dishwasher tabs. I've definitely got like what's going on with my dishwasher on my mind this morning. But I think it's been, showing up in little places, even like on websites where you show up and there's like a little chat in the corner. That's been around for so long. I think we've been sort of expecting our tech to not necessarily read our minds, but like meet us where we are with exactly what need we have at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, for all of those folks that use Gmail or the G Suite for your work or personal life, for a long time, it's finishing your emails for you. it's typing the all the best at the bottom, and without
Yeah.
having to, for all of you, giving a input to it. So it's been around for some time, and in ways that we might not have been so obvious. And then I think obviously with Chat GPT and now Bard, we've all been able to see the power of it. We've had it write our dog, a poem about our dog in the language of like Taylor Swift, and you can see how powerful these tools are, and that's really amazing. So with that said, you're a software engineer, momentum trained software engineers. Many of the folks tuning in, I see some names, employ and recruit software engineers. What is this like, oh crap moment as a software engineer when you see the power of this technology? Can you talk a little bit about what you think it's going to do to this trade in our industry?
Yeah. So I will preface this by saying, like, I've been reading like voraciously about this. And what that looks like is I'm reading, what a lot of tech professionals think is going to happen. Like basically the answer to the question you just asked me. So I've read a lot of blog posts. I've watched a lot of talks about this. I've heard, seen a lot of tweets. And I've also lately been talking to people who are working in the industry to get their take on that. And everybody's take is different, which is really interesting to me because, I think in general, my first response and the response of a lot of seasoned tech professionals is like, okay, this is hype. We've seen this before. This is just like the blockchain, isn't it? I kind of like had a bit of an eye roll when this all started happening. Last November was when ChatGPT came out. I was like, okay, I'll eventually figure out what that is, but like, I don't, sure, whatever. And lately, so one thing that's really interesting to me is that it's evolving so fast. Like once I started figuring out what it was and like paying attention, I realized like every day, really, like even in the past couple of days, something new is being rolled out, or it's like, oh, now the model can do this. We didn't predict this. These so-called emergent abilities, like it could do some really impressive stuff, like, write a poem about your dog in the style of Taylor Swift. Great. And I was like, all right. We also have had, that reminds me, GitHub Copilot, which is a tool folks may have heard of or used, which is kind of like what you're talking about, that sort of type ahead, like it predicts what you're trying to say. But that is backed by the model behind ChatGPT, one of the older models, GPT 3.5, and it's good at predicting code. I started using it and I actually kind of like it sometimes, depends on what I'm doing. Doesn't get me all the way there, but it gets me like maybe 80% of the way there, which is helpful to me when I'm like, I don't want to stop and go look this thing up. But so I think, developers have had that, tech people have had that for a few years now. And I think people range from like, love it to hate it to like, dismissive of it. But that sort of thing is going to get better and better and better. So where does that leave us as tech professionals? I haven't talked to anybody who is really seasoned in the industry who thinks this is really a threat to our jobs, in the sense of like, oh gosh, AI, I'm going to be replaced by AI. Although I hear that question in the ether, but I think the folks who've been around for a while realize, there's a lot more to the business of building software than figuring out code syntax. And if you get this bot, like, to the tech professionals out there, like give it a go if you haven't already. Like ask ChatGPT to write you, a React application or something and see what you get. It's really interesting. It gives you runnable code a lot of the time. But is it the code that you want? Is it good code? Somebody made the point to me the other day that like it's trained on all the code, the public code on GitHub. And a lot of that is terrible. Like anyway. So I think it's interesting. It's a mirror for what's out there. I'm excited about ways to integrate it. I'm certain that we'll all be using it all the time and we'll be discovering ways to use it. I don't think that, I think it's going to be rocky. Because I think we're going to have to figure out how to get on top of what it's going to do for developers. It's going to make them like much more productive. There are some stats that like there's a little experiment that GitHub ran to test out developers working with Copilot versus without Copilot. And there was an increase in productivity with the developers working with Copilot to build the same thing of like something bananas, like 55% more productive. You know, it took them like less than half the time to build the same exact thing. Now there's a lot of ways you could argue with those stats for sure. I have a lot of questions about them myself, but I think there's no doubt that it's going to make you like, it's going to just make you faster. It's going to give you more code. What that means, more code means more bugs. Like, so I think it's going to be interesting if we all get like that much more productive and make more code happen. Like, where will that leave us? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, today's session's for folks that are in the HR profession and are really thinking strategically about what their teams need to look like, what roles they need to hire for. And if you think about, to your point, Amy, like this is a force multiplier. This is going to make teams more productive if they use it. And if your cybersecurity measures will allow it too. We to prepare for this week, we have a couple conversations going on this week. So our team went and had conversations with a lot of our graduates that are a myriad of different kinds of companies. And there are some enterprise companies that are not allowing any of the AI tools to be used because of IP concerns and cybersecurity concerns and issues. So there's a lot of layers there too. But if you do have a team that's able to use it, or if you're thinking about recruiting and you're thinking about, okay, we can have a development team that's 55% more productive, that's amazing. And also, all of your competitors from a business perspective have access to this too.
Right.
So if you're not keeping up with it, if everybody can write more software and add more features to their products and do so in a really quickly and iterative way, if you're not using these tools, you are definitely behind.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that that's clear. Like I mentioned that my initial reaction was like, okay, hype, we'll get over this hype cycle and it'll be something else in 2 months. I've changed my mind on that. I definitely think this is going to be, it's going to be like, when suddenly everybody's office at work had a computer in it. Like before that wasn't the case. And then we kind of over a period of, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 years, like that just became the norm. This is going to become the norm. But in what way? And also we haven't even touched on like the ethics of any of this, which is another huge consideration, but I think it's definitely going to change things, and it's going to change things broadly in ways that nobody knows. We can't predict it, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. Like we have to, in the business of whatever business we're in, we have to make predictions. We have to prepare. So I think we're in a place where we're preparing for something that we don't actually know what it is yet. Which is like, we've got to be like agile and we've got to be resilient and all that stuff that we're used to being in the tech industry. But I'm curious what you think, Jessica, from where you sit. Like your background is at HR and you've got, you've got your perspective working with the career support focus for our folks. Like what do you think is going to be the impact on the workforce of AI? Like what are your predictions for this?
A couple. So one, I think that there are going to be job descriptions. And for all of you that have been paying attention to these trends over the years and just generally how technology has disrupted the industry, I think you've probably heard so much that, we no longer have a career ladder. We have like this career matrix as individuals. And that the jobs of tomorrow simply do not exist today. And that is so true about this. I think, when you mentioned, Amy, that there's going to be more code that's going to be able to be written. That means that there's going to be more bugs. So we know QA engineering is going to be really necessary. If you think about building out teams and what resources and what roles you're going to need, there's going to be additional roles. Maybe, we've heard the term, it started off as kind of a joke, but now I think it's actually becoming a serious job title of like prompt engineering. So people that know how to use the AI tools really well and how to apply them quickly, that job title, I haven't yet seen that job title exist. Also, our team did a deep dive a couple weeks ago because we wanted to make sure our curriculum was ready for these roles. And like, Amy, you went and found job titles that had AI in them at places like, if you all listen to Spotify and you haven't yet met Spotify's AI DJ, I highly recommend it. It is also amazing. It will also blow your mind at what's capable of this. So we went and found that technology and we said, let's see what a job description looks like to work for the company that's making Spotify's AI DJ. And all of the job descriptions, like the requirements for the descriptions were just like so simple. And I think that shows these jobs haven't existed before. We don't know what the skills and requirements are. We're really looking for people that are pioneers. And I love that, like, are you a settler? Are you a pioneer? Right now, you need to be a pioneer from a skill set perspective. You need to be willing to go out into the wild, wild west and try something that's not been done before. And I think that's going to be really critical. And it's something that we focus on instilling in the folks that we're working with and helping get into the workforce in a new way through technology. So I don't think we know what the jobs are going to be. I think HR professionals are going to be really agile. I think this is a real opportunity to actually make meaningful impact and change in how we think about the gates that are kept to get into an organization and removing some of those. So for example, we can learn from years past and not make the same mistakes. Back in 2015, Amy and I were actually working together and we were in one of the first code school movements. And an example that we commonly shared with people that were coming through the program and going out into the world as software engineers for the first time was there were job descriptions that said you need to have a minimum of 5 years of experience in a framework called React. Well, React had came out in 2013. So in 2015, nobody, not the people that invented React, had 5 years of experience. And that's just a perfect example. And we had multiple different examples of that, where the job descriptions would have a year's requirement tied to them for technology that hadn't been around for as long as those requirements were. So this is a real opportunity to evaluate. There is no college or university that is producing or giving people skills in prompt engineering right now, because that job didn't exist before. So is this the time to be putting college degree requirements on job descriptions? This is probably finally the time for us to move away from that. So I think this is an opportunity for, if I'm thinking about hiring and how we hire in the future for our organization, and I think about these skills and what's required, this is the time for real innovation. This is the time for those things that you might have wanted to push internally at your organization that had some pushback, that, you know, the world just got completely shaken up again. And this is like the early internet all over again. Like this is the next serious wave. So if you were around and in the workforce in the early internet days, think about that kind of disruption. I think this is the same level of disruption probably happening at an accelerated pace.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And it also reminds me of like the sea change that everything went through over the years of the pandemic. You know, like some really seismic changes happened. The shift to remote work where nobody was ready, or in some cases even willing to do that, you know, that was forced on us. And it exposed some possibilities, I think, that didn't exist before, because we were sort of like forced forward into that. And I think some of that is going to happen with AI also, you know, like you will, if you don't like it and you don't want it, I have bad news for you. It's still going to happen. And so like, what does that mean for the way that the way we work has to evolve, you know? And I think one thing that I find so many things are exciting about this, and also maybe equally terrifying also. But I think one thing that I think is really exciting is like, if you don't have to spend that time in your day writing the email that you're used to writing, you know what I mean? Like AI is going to write the whole email for you, not just like the way Google does now with like, here's a little few words, but like all of it. And then it's going to take you, instead of 20 minutes or whatever, it's going to take you a fraction of that time. So multiply that across your day with all of those tedious tasks. What are you going to do with that extra time? You know, like the space that frees up for human creativity. Like we always say, you know, we work in a startup, Jessica, and you and I, we've got our heads down so often and we're just grinding forward and like trying to make things work like so many people in this industry do. And like we always say, wouldn't it be great if we could just like clear our calendars? We could have a day just to sit and think. And that space is going to free up in people's calendars, right? Like it's going to be possible to reorganize your day, your week, your month, your forecast for your year, for everybody on like big scale and small scale. So like, what does that mean to you? Like what are some things you are excited about with all of this?
Yeah, well, and I also think to your point, we're already seeing this on LinkedIn. I saw this, there's a lot more LinkedIn content happening right now because people are using ChatGPT and Bard to help write their marketing articles and those type of things. And so there is going to be this immunity that happens with the audience too, where, people are going to really know, okay, AI wrote this email. So I think actually human to human interaction is going to become more important. So the past couple decades with technology, we've kind of moved away from human interaction. A lot more happens on our screens as opposed to having a dialogue like this and actually having a live conversation. And being able to have live conversational skills and communicate is so important now more than it has been. So it's kind of flipping those skills back up to the surface. And that's really critical in being able to work on teams and communicate code. And to your point, there's going to be more bugs. There's going to be more, having to figure out, yes, I had an AI write all this, but it doesn't quite make sense. We need to work together as a collective to figure out why. And so the human skills of being able to actually live discuss what's going on and having live creative discussions is going to become really important, and building product together on a team is going to become important, and solving complex problems on a team, because a lot of the minutia is going to be taken away. And because, you're going to need to be able to prove that you are more than just what the AI provides you to your work. So I think, what we focus on at Momentum is very much around teaching people those skills. At the end of the day, what we care about is, does somebody know how to learn? Does somebody know how to pick up additional skills? And have they been able to work together on a team to solve a complex problem and to make something happen that didn't exist yesterday? Can they build a product that literally didn't exist yesterday? And so that's going to be really important. And I think, this is an area where leadership development, being part of the fabric of every organization at every level, is going to be really critical and really important to the onboarding process, and to thinking about who you hire, and setting the expectation that you have to have a growth mindset to work in our organization, because your job is going to change. And that's going to happen at an enterprise level. And, it's already happening at a startup level. But I think that's really exciting. I really do. I think it actually gives us a lot more opportunity. And we just need to act on it like now. We do have a question coming in from the chat box, or a comment, I should say. It's about 9:00 Eastern. I know we have people coming in from other time zones. We really want this to be Q&A oriented. So please go ahead and use the chat box to drop in your questions, and anything that you're curious about on this topic. If Amy and I, we've spent a lot of time, again, reading about this and communicating to employers about it for the past couple months. So we're happy to give you the perspective that we've gained from those conversations. Amy Robertson mentioned that this reminds her of digital marketing and social media roles back in the day. We didn't have universities educating on them. That's exactly right. Employers are going to have to take some onus on providing educational opportunities. And those educational opportunities are going to have to be centered not only on, did you learn the code or the syntax, but instead of that, it's really going to have to be focused on, can you actually put this to practice in a team? So, how many of us have like had a chance to learn something and we feel like we have an understanding of it, but we're not able to actually do it? The training has to be evolved around the back part of that, actually being able to do something. So I think all training is going to have to be really practice-based and be an opportunity for team development and leadership development infused within any specific skill training.
Yeah. And, even like, I think there's a lot of questions there's nothing but questions, wall-to-wall questions about like, where's this going to go? Questions even like, are we going to run out of data to pour in? Are we going to even have the capability? Like, the more data you pour in there, the more compute power you're going to need to be able to create really accurate results. Anyway, like, the scale of this thing is so huge. So I think nobody really understands, like, how are we as humans just going to get our arms around this? And I think the other question is like, who's going to get their arms around it, and who's going to be the one setting the tone and directing the conversation. I think we're at a point where, and this is really exciting to me because, the reason I work at Momentum is I want to see a tech industry that mirrors the world, the diversity of the world. I want everybody to have a voice in like, where's this going to go? Not just a small select crew of the same old people in Silicon Valley. We know those guys. It needs to be bigger, a bigger conversation, and everybody who uses AI has a chance to say about how should we implement this and with what rules and regulations. If the governments are going to get involved, I think they're going to have to. That's a whole other conversation I'm not ready for. But, thinking about who's going to be able to use this effectively, who's going to figure it out, and how are we going to enable those? How are we going to put those people in place to be able to do that? We've all seen at our workplace, you have those moments of like, I work with this team and this team is so special because we have trust. We have, we complement each other's skill sets. I love working with this team. Like, we're still going to need that. We're still going to need that human synergy. We're going to need people driving this whole thing, steering the ship, not just prompt engineering, which interestingly, over the past couple of days, I've seen people say like, maybe that's not so important. I don't know. But like, what are we using it for? And how are we using it? If you are going to go to see to your therapy appointment and you're going to talk to a bot, like if you watch The Mandalorian, you've seen that happen, like terrifying, right? Do we want that? It's always the question in tech that I find so fascinating. Like, not can we do this, but should we do this?
Yes.
Will we do this?
For sure. And there's two like components of that. There's one, the people that are actually building the AI tools and the data sets that are going into it. And to your point, a lot of it's getting learned from just what's out there in the internet. And not all of that is great. Some of it is, but there's a lot of stuff there that has a lot of inherent biases and issues that exist in society. And then there's also the force multiplier of this just evens the playing field for a lot of like small business and new. I think we're going to see so much new business creation. I think that their teams might shrink at enterprise companies because of the efficiency of AI, but I think the ability to create companies and have more activity that's happening in more software products is going to only heighten. And so there will be net new companies for people to work for and contribute.
Totally.
And that has like a real equity piece to it. And that is, wide open. Everybody's got access to this tool, but on the other side of it, these tools are still being built by some human, and they have some, considerations to what's going into this and what makes it smart. We have another question around what other jobs, marketing, content positions, what have we think will happen with writing or not writing, or excuse me, not code writing positions. I've got some thoughts on this, and Amy, I'm curious to know what you've thought of or seen as well. I think if you are in marketing right now, this is the biggest opportunity you've had to have to be creative, because we're already seeing it. You can write several different blogs with an SEO, a search engine optimization target in the blogs very quickly with ChatGPT, and get it out there. And all your competitors are doing the same thing. And there's going to be, I think, a flood of content that people are going to stop paying attention to, because it's going to all be somewhat similar. So I think marketing professionals are really going to have to find an authentic voice, are going to have to be really creative with the content that they're writing. If ChatGPT can write it, it's probably too generic unless you're just using it for an SEO reason. And I think, I mean, I have some, as somebody that runs a startup, have like some friction on this, but I think us as leaders and leaders on your team and yourself are going to have to be, your voice, your actual voice is going to have to be out there more. And people, authenticity is the game. I mean, if you think about like TikTok and what Gen Z is really paying attention to, it's all around authenticity. It's not around judged up marketing. So I think marketers are going to have to be really creative to kind of covertly and authentically market, and writing roles are going to completely change. And really good journalists that can write a piece that involves a lot of investigation, a lot of talking to people are going to thrive in this kind of environment, because it's going to be very clear their content is much better. And I think for marketers, that's going to be the same. They're going to have to produce really good thought leadership, good content. And it's going to, if a bot can write it, it's too generic.
Yeah, I think that's really spot on. I've noticed just in the past couple of months of, using ChatGPT to write some things, and just disclosure, like my background is in writing. I used to teach writing. I'm a total writing snob. So I pay attention to the quality of writing, and I've noticed I can tell the difference between like, oh, this is a real person wrote this, because I'm getting the person, to like, oh, this is boilerplate. This is just like, I can skim this and I'm not getting a feeling of like a voice behind it. So I would say, like, if you have questions around this, like, ask ChatGPT to write you something the way that you would, let's say, the way you would delegate it to, somebody on your marketing team. Give ChatGPT the task and see what they do with it. It does with it. But I think also one thing that you're right, like you said, these roles are going to change. And I'm interested to see if roles in marketing and content writing for the web become ever so slightly more technical. Maybe your marketing team is already working on a WordPress site or something like that, and they know how to like pull the levers in the dashboard or whatever. I think we're going to see this technology allow those folks who are sort of tech adjacent actually do more of the tech, because AI is going to be able to give you like, a really customized written, plugin for what you need, or actually like a website, simple marketing website, a landing page. It's going to be more in the grasp of like more and more of your team, because those tech skills are going to be farmed out to AI. Those like, really simple things. And I say simple, relatively speaking, relative to other development jobs. Those are things that I think are going to be more in reach of more people. And that's going to be interesting, because it's an opportunity for like allowing people in their current roles to upskill or reskill, or just diversify their own set of career tools.
Yeah, it's Scott Galloway, who's an NYU marketing professor, said this recently. It's AI is not going to take your job in marketing, but somebody who understands AI is going to take your job in marketing.
Yep.
So I think that, like, when you're looking at those roles, I don't see those roles going away. I think those people are going to have to get much more creative and much more tech enabled. And to your point, Amy, technical. So AI won't take that job. Somebody who understands AI will take that job.
Using AI, totally. Yep.
So we have another question. We mentioned the shift from experience or credential-based hiring to skills-based hiring. This will have to happen for all functional areas, not just engineering, but marketing, finance, etc. This will have an impact on many things, including how we interview candidates and onboard new employees. A lot of this challenge will fall on HR department. So good comment, Katie. Yeah, that is very true. And this has been a struggle. I feel like we've had, how do you interview technical people? And how do you do it well? And how do you actually measure a candidate towards the job that they're going to do has been an ongoing conversation for the past, I mean, since we've been running this company, and companies have come to us and asked for advice on it. And we've seen a lot of good practices and bad practices happen in that space. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. And what AI is, this broader conversation we are having as a society and as an industry around AI, right now, as an HR professional, I'd be just running to make some significant change at the organization, because I think it gives you this opportunity, another disruption, where you can actually look at your practices and make them a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. And I mean, there's so many possible applications of AI in this arena. And I think that there are, good applications and there are bad applications of it, not just in HR, but everywhere. But I think, how can you use AI to accomplish your goals in a way that is, from the values that your company holds, like that you're ensuring that your company's values are being represented in that process, that you're treating people fairly, and this is a real problem with AI right now. There's bias inherent in the models because humans are biased, and that's what we put into it, right? So like we've had to, measures have had to be taken to try to train those models away from bias and discriminatory comments and judgments. And I think it's not, it's still not rooted out. It won't be, because humans are like that. So that means to some degree, some of the same problems are still there. They're just potentially amplified if you put your trust in an AI assessment of somebody. Get on Twitter and follow what the developers are saying about AI. If you ask ChatGPT to describe a software engineer, it's going to use he pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
Same for a lot of other traditionally, male jobs historically. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, like, how can we correct for that? How can we make sure that we don't turn over? AI speaks with the voice of authority. There's this sense of like, if the computer is doing it, the computer is right. But AI is not the same as your computer. It is not, thinking in that way. It's not the same kind of logic. It's a very, very different proposition. So it's going to arrive at conclusions that are wrong. We've seen it. It's going to make things up. Somebody on our team tested out, give me a LinkedIn bio based on my LinkedIn, profile. And AI was like, well, of course, you have 20 years of experience as a leader in healthcare. And she didn't at all. It like completely fabricated this thing, but it sounded really good.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to have to be big critics, and we're going to have to go in with a really, an eye of constant questioning. Everything is more important than ever. And I think from an HR perspective too, I mean, this is going to, like, deep fakes. And I was met with a group of, there's a female entrepreneurs group that I met with last week, and some of the parents were talking about this whole issue of using voice to, commit fraud, and have a call go out to a grandparent in the voice of their grandchild, and it sounded very real and authentic. So like, I think that HR folks, might have to run into that, where somebody could show you that an employee is doing something and that's completely made up. So that territory is like a whole nother beast that's going to be really interesting and kind of scary for, I think, all of us. So there again, to your point, like ethics, there's a lot here that needs to be addressed as well. And I'm not sure who or how we're going to tackle that, except we all have to be really good critical thinkers in a time like this. We have another question. How will HR support become more automated? I think about email questions we receive, create a case and answer one by one, how AI tools can automate answering employees' questions, benefits, leave policies, et cetera. I think for sure AI bots can significantly help. We've already moved to like worlds of templates and canned responses and those type of things. So this just enhances that a little bit more. Amy and I were actually testing a tool, or we were getting demoed a tool a couple weeks ago, which was a anonymous question called what? Questionox? Suggestionox, where, as it's built for HR leaders, and they could receive anonymous feedback from employees on various different questions or experiences. And then once you responded to them, there were canned responses, but then you could also, if a question was unique, you could have the form actually respond in different voices and tones. So you could say, please, like, write a response to this person, or you would type the initial response because maybe the computer doesn't know how to answer that employee's question, but then you can edit it by just saying, make this sound friendlier, make this sound more authoritative. And it generated a different kind of email. It's really helpful for global companies. You could, say, put this in a different language, or consider a different cultural take on this. I think that we could get those tools to be that smart, which is just going to, again, make that aspect of your job more efficient. But then on the flip side, it's going to be creating more complicated problems for HR to solve as a result of all of this. And then, of course, IP issues and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we're going to see a more nuanced version of some tools we're already used to, like, when you go and you have you're on a company's website, and it's like you've got a customer support question, and you're funneled into their little chat bot, and they're giving you the canned responses that are not exactly your question. And you're like, just let me talk to a person. I think that we're going to be able to put some sort of artificial intelligence in that space between like those two extremes of like a live person and the canned responses, which are too generic to be useful. I think that that AI tools will allow a company to do, they're really good at, some of the models are really good at sentiment analysis, which will be able to tell, like, is this an angry email? Is this a complimentary email? Is this an email that I have to take action on? And then, like you say, we can tailor our responses to have a tone that we intend to communicate, not just the content and not just like, one size fits all. And I think, we're also going to be able to, in fact, I feel like if I take 2 hours off of reading articles, I lose the thread of what's the most current thing. But I believe it is possible with I know it's possible with the API for Open API, and maybe even some of these plugins that ChatGPT released yesterday, to like put your company's own stuff into this model. And I want to footnote and come back to that point, because there's a big caveat there, but like, to marry your content, like your own HR policies, or, whatever you're trying to communicate into that model to make it real. I don't know exactly how that would work. And here's the footnote: you don't want to pour that stuff into ChatGPT today, because then that becomes part of the big, massive data input, and like it's gone and you won't get it back. Like, don't put confidential stuff in there, but exactly. It will be possible in a secure way. I don't know how that will happen exactly.
Well, there's already companies, like there's a local company, we met with the CTO last week, what they're doing is, it's funny, they're building, it's large language models, but with small data sets. So they're proprietary companies. So they're building an LLM, but inside of an enterprise organization that's just all that proprietary data and has this security and safety, where it's not getting out of that firewall or whatever the term is. And so that is a real tool for HR folks. I will say, we've run into this for years and years. The immediate opportunity, there's already companies spinning out doing that, is to use AI to scan resumes for jobs. And I think that with a lot of jobs that can be helpful, but I do think for a lot of these newer job opportunities that are kind of come out as a result of AI, those tools could potentially be even more biased, and you could potentially, because of its scanning for skill sets that don't exist, or for skill sets that somebody just has to have the know-how to put on their resume, that creates a lot of other issues. So I think using AI in recruiting is something that we're going to have to really have a lot of scrutiny about. What is the outcome of AI and recruiting tools? And then again, how do we actually determine if a candidate can do the job? And really what we're evaluating is, do they have a growth mindset and can they learn? Because we're going to hire somebody into a job, and we know a year from today, the way that they do that job is going to look different, especially if our company is leaning into this new technology. And probably actually 6 months from the time that they're hired, it's going to look different. And so I care less about the proven skills on their resume before, and I care more about, do they have some of these more non-tangible factors? Do they have a growth mindset? And so putting people through project-based interviewing, that also has some tricks and downfalls too, but I think we're going to have to figure that out. So I don't love using AI in recruiting yet.
I wonder what you think, Jessica. You're talking about scanning resumes. I wonder if we're moving into an era where the resume goes away, because you can bet today people are having ChatGPT write their resumes, and I can guarantee what was that?
And cover letters.
And cover letters, right? So what value does that have in an HR context when, this has been a slow progression, right? Like the cover letter, there's templates everywhere, there's a formula, they're all the same. How can we be more imaginative about how do we really tell whether this person's a good fit for us? What are some tools we can maybe innovate, maybe using AI in a way that allow us to, think about here are the things we're listening for. Here are the things we want to measure on. How can you do that in a way that's fair and also gives you the outcome that you want? You're making a bet, I guess, in any case.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would love to see the resume go away.
Me too. I hate resume writing.
I think, and it does feel like sending a PDF of a resume, that it already feels a little outdated. We are definitely doing it. But there's a lot of opportunity here. I think this discussion and where we end up in 5 years is going to be super interesting. With that said, we have about 5 minutes left to take questions. We would love some additional questions. Okay, we do. We've got a question coming in. So I'll take this one and then we'll close out. All right, let's see. I think that a lot of repetitive information requests for HR talent acquisition may transition to more of a bot type interaction. Think the DMV chat bot. Yep. Allowing HR leaders to focus more on strategy, human engagement, etc. Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that. I love the idea of using super sophisticated tech to become more human. That sounds really good to me.
Yeah, and I do think AI is going to create more problems that HR is going to have to address than they know right now, and that those problems are going to have to be solved. Those are going to be complex problems that a bot's not going to be able to solve. So if you have a tool that can answer all of those simple repetitive information requests and questions, then you can really focus on how are we going to tackle recruiting? What are we going to replace the resume with? How are we going to adapt to this? How are we going to check social media and make sure we're hiring somebody? That actually there's an AI company, I think based in DC, that built a tool where HR can hire them to go scan social media accounts that are public for prospective candidates and ensure that those candidates haven't done anything nefarious on social media or haven't made any, bad comments about people or threats or those kind of things, and without exposing to that person exactly everything on that person's social media profile, just letting them know, hey, there's a flag or there's not a flag here. That's interesting. Social media is interesting, and how do we evaluate what people are putting out in the public when we hire candidates? So there's a lot of there's a lot of fun problems, I think, complex problems to solve right now that these rote tools are going to help you free up the time for.
Yeah, totally. And I think the best way to figure out like what are the particular questions you're going to have to answer, whether you're an HR leader or whether you're a software engineer or you're a CEO of a startup, you need to sit down and use ChatGPT for a minute and like just figure out how it's different from other things you've used, and see if you can push it a little bit to, if you're curious, like what would happen if I gave it this, like we were talking about using AI for interviewing and as an experiment, because I know that our folks, at Momentum are using AI, and I want to think about like, how can we use it in a way that actually supports us and is helpful? So as an experiment, I was like, let me see if I can get it to interview me, give me a technical interview. And I asked it to interview me on a couple of different technical topics at different levels. And I really had to instruct it in a way that it was like not good at right at first. And I had to give it very specific questions in order to get it to do what I wanted. At which point I was like, this is too much work. I would rather just, you know what I mean? Like you have to work with it. It's not going to just be like magically reading your mind, which is a bit, what you were talking about with prompt engineering. So I'm like giving it a lot of this setup, and it eventually, asked me some questions that I recognized, were real questions ish. And I gave it real answers, and I gave it bad answers, and I gave good answers and all this stuff. And at the end, I was like, I don't know, is this better than anything? I don't know if it really is. Like, I felt like it was a huge time sink for me. I mean, it's been that much time out, like half an hour, but still, like, I felt like, am I getting the value out of this that I really, would I use this? Does it tell me anything really? I don't know, but it was an interesting experiment because it helps me understand its utility and its limitations. And, it also helps me clarify what I care about. And I think that's one huge piece of AI that I really like, that idea of like, bouncing ideas off and reusing it to refine, to get you past the blank slate, to just like get the ball rolling and help you. Maybe you end up not using AI for a certain task, but AI has helped you arrive at a place where you know what your strategy will be, and you know how you will approach something.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, we have 2 minutes left of the session today, and we've got some folks that are already bolting to their next meetings. So I think what we want to leave everybody with is we are in another pioneering moment as an industry. We don't know what's west of here. We have no idea. It's going to take a lot of thinking on our feet. It's a real opportunity to learn from our mistakes and lessons of the past and to iterate, but also that with the introduction of all these tools, fundamentally what people are going to need to be able to do to have like career durability, to use that term, is to be able to work well with others on teams and to be able to solve complex unknown problems. Yep. Using in a tech-enabled way, but ultimately at the end of the day, getting in a live conversation with a colleague and being able to talk through, this is what we're working on, this is what's broken, this is what needs to be fixed, and having a dialogue is going to be so critical. And that's the skill of the future that we have to hone in on, is solving complex problems as humans on teams. And that's really what we focus all of our efforts here on Momentum. And we have upskilling training available. We are implementing AI into all of our curriculum. Also, the candidates that come out of our programs are learning Python, which is a core language that is used in a lot of the AI tool development. So we're already there, and we would love to do upskilling for your teams on this issue. And then we would also like to help you build new talent. And I think organizations are going to really need to take the onus on helping create that new talent through actually investing in the education and the training of those individuals. And so we'd love to help you all do that as well. We'll send you a follow-up, and we really appreciate your time this morning. We hope this was helpful and interesting. Please send us feedback, because This is the first time we've done a session like this, and we would like to do it again, and we would like it to be even more helpful. So send us feedback, and thank you again. Thank you so much, Amy, for taking time of your morning to do this. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. That ends our session today.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right.